Thanks, Malcolm. East Asia on the whole has welcomed greater US commitment to the Asia-Pacific, allowing it to be more proactive in relying on the United States with confidence to hedge China. Nevertheless, there are risks for the US if it seeks to use its formal alliance networks to determine what the rules of the game are and demand that China abide by its interpretation of how those rules should be followed. East Asian states are becoming enmeshed in an evolving regional economic order that is increasingly dependent on China for its stability and prosperity. The rise of China brings benefits and opportunities as well as challenges. So any attempt by the US to use its repivot to impose outside solutions on East Asia's internal problems will not be welcomed by the region. And it's like Joseph raised the point about the Shanghai Cooperation Organisation, and that's a good reminder that China's Asia is not just maritime and eastwards, it's also westwards and about land power as well. We should always remember that. Understanding the political economy of the Sinocentric dimensions of East Asia's emerging order is essential for any determination of whether the economic statecraft dimensions of the US repivot, which Marianne correctly says is invested heavily in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, is and will be seen by China as a challenge to its economic interests, let alone achieve the goal of revitalising the US economy through trade and investment. This is because one of the weaknesses of much of the security debate over the rise of China is that it is largely disconnected from the political economy literature on regional integration, and Marianne's an honourable exception there. While China may have emerged as a military power over the last decade, the process of opening up the national economy to regional markets began more than 30 years ago and has hardly lost pace since. Moreover, to the extent that we focus on the Chinese economy, it is on the growth in Chinese demand for our resources, outward Chinese foreign direct investment, and the strategic as opposed to commercial interests of its state-owned enterprises. Our focus is also on whether China is a currency manipulator. The answer to that question, it seems to me, and I might be rather simple here, is that while the Chinese yuan appreciated 25% against the US dollar between the 1st of January 2005 and the 31st of December 2011, the US trade deficit with China grew by 31.78% over the same period. And in 2012, the yuan is appreciating, though it's gone through periods of depreciating, interestingly, this year, while the US trade deficit with China continues to rise. The most important dynamic integrating thing in East Asia over the past 30 years has been and remains private, small-scale, overseas Chinese investment in mainland manufacturing production. Extensive Sinocentric distribution chains were created. And since the Asian financial crisis of 97-98, these distribution chains have been complemented by the establishment of extensive supply chains extending from the mainland right throughout East and Southeast Asia, as Chinese small and medium enterprises source raw materials and components. This pattern of economic integration that is creating a Chinese economy linking the mainland with Hong Kong and Taiwan and the overseas Chinese business spheres is the foundation upon which the Chinese state identifies and pursues its regional initiatives that establish political frameworks for enmeshment. Now, I can only dot point these for you here. I don't have a PowerPoint to do this, but we're talking about the significance of the Chinese-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, which has developed over the last decade and came into full operation at the beginning of 2010. The emergence of ASEAN Plus 3 perhaps is the key leadership dialogue process in the region, with its Chiang Mai initiative, which some commentators see as putting in place the building blocks for an Asian monetary fund. In March this year, Australia and China signed a bilateral currency swap agreement. One of the key elements of the Chiang Mai initiative are currency swap agreements worth $30 billion. And that's the first of its type, the first of these agreements with a Western economy. ASEAN is proposing the establishment of an East Asian economic community built, at least symbolically, around an East Asian free trade agreement or free trade area. And the emergence of what Subramanian and Kessler from the Peterson Institute for International Economics call renminbi or yuan bloc in East Asia that it already exists now. And the economic rules of the game, which are one of the main themes, are already embodied for the Chinese in existing international institutions to which China belongs and participates actively in, and for some of the literature is successfully socialised into. So for China, the question is engage with and accommodate the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, or ignore it. As the TPP is the economic component of the US repivot, and it will be questioned by China because it does not involve China and is easily presented, as Marianne again said, as an attempt to sideline China economically. But it is hard to see how the TPP will have much impact at all on the types of regional economic and political dynamics witnessed over the past 30 years in the region. East Asian participants in TPP negotiations, I don't think will see it as, and I quote, the most credible pathway to broader Asia-Pacific regional economic integration, end of quote, which is the claim made on the official website of the Office of the United States Trade Representative. They're more likely, specifically Singapore, to see it as a narrow technical agreement that will allow them to tighten up the rules on intellectual property rights, for example. China will ignore the TPP because it will judge that the TPP will not enhance the economic interests of the US in East Asia in a way that substantially challenges China's growing economic interests. But there is a but here, and it could be an important but. We'll just have to wait and see. I've got a second observation about this, and I'd like to just preface it with what Stephen Walt would describe to me as a penetrating leap into the obvious. Just as the United States has policy debates over how to understand and respond to the rise of China in the Asia-Pacific, China has policy debates over how to understand and to respond to the behaviour of the United States. Just as the policies of engaging with China can be heated, especially during an election year. Note in the debate with Romney over foreign policy that President Obama said, and I quote, China is both an adversary but also a potential partner. I think if he had his time again, he would want to reverse that. So too is the politics of engaging with the United States during a leadership transition year in China, especially one characterised by barely concealed divisions within the ruling Communist Party. The ruling Communist Party is divided over domestic policies and in foreign policy over how to react to the challenge of the reassertion of US primacy and what a more assertive hegemony or return, and I quote, return to Cold War mentality about alliances, as the Chinese commentators put it, I prefer that description as well, but anyway, means for not only China's interests throughout the Asia-Pacific, but also for its vision of an emerging regional order that is increasingly Sinocentric, that is hierarchical, but also harmonious as a result. Nathan and Scoble remind us in their article in How China Sees America, the sum of Beijing's fears, in the current edition of Foreign Affairs, that China has, and I quote, an acute sense of its vulnerability, and that in what they call China's 4 security rings, each of which is, and again, quote, a terrain of hazards for the Chinese. The US is omnipresent in all of these. Even when, and I quote, even when US officials speak sweetly and softly, they remind us their Chinese counterparts hear sugar-coated threats and focus on the big stick in the background. Now, the debate in China goes something like this. Don't initiate tensions, but respond in a measured manner to perceived provocations. Accommodate the interests of others and work cooperatively to re-establish the win-win status quo. Seek the respect and acceptance of others. Accept and behave according to the rules of the game. That's the moderate position within the leadership. Opposed to that is stand up to the buggers, stand up to the aggressors. Be more proactive and assertive in defending China's core national interests. Be prepared to use force when provoked to do so. Growl diplomacy is better than smile diplomacy. The solution to myriad domestic and international challenges facing us is not Western-style reform, but a return to the party's Maoist roots and its communist spirit. They are on the surface in the debate this year during the leadership transition. Now, the views of the party's moderate reformers prevail for the moment. Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang will take over the leadership reins in November and early next year, as has been planned for 4 years ago. But the left opposition has popular support, and it also has support within the PLA. It's one of the key reasons why Bo Xilai was removed from power. This support is sustained by patriotic fervour. The risk for the moderate reformers when the party plays its patriotic card, as it has to shore up its hold on the mandate of heaven, is that it gives succour to the left opposition. The critique of the moderate reformers is fed by social media, which is beyond the apparatus of the state to control in China. The party is not fulfilling its patriotic duty. Bo Xilai was right. That's what you see on the banners and posters in the demonstrations. And also note that during the recent anti-Japanese demonstrations in September, protesters were carrying banners of Mao Zedong, not Hu Jintao. Herein lies the main challenge for the US repivot, including its economic dimension. The pivot has become a major source of contention in China's patriotic games. And just how patriotic does the leadership have to appear to be for the Communist Party to retain its hold on power? Every new fifth-generation leader is a potential hardliner on economic as well as on strategic and political challenges. Thank you.